You're listening to Groundbreaking, where consulting meets innovation. Welcome back to Groundbreaking, where consulting meets innovation. My name is Sobh.
And I'm Peter Nabhan. And for all of you who are new here, this is a podcast for engineering consulting firm called ECS Companies.
We are celebrating our final episode of 2024 by reflecting on this year's incredible guests. From insightful lessons in leadership to discussions on brownfields and research development, our guests have generously shared a wealth of knowledge and practical advice, inspiring us and our audience along the way.
Excellent. And to your point, Judd, this year we've had 6 episodes so far.
6 episodes.
Excellent. That's a good start. And what we started the podcast with, we did an episode actually with young talent, and we brought in one of our senior VPs from Texas. And that episode, what I liked is they had different experiences in their careers. So we had Matthew Jacobson, couple years out. We had Caroline Ringler. She's been an intern with us, so she's still in college. And then we had Matt Robbins. And they all shared invaluable advice. And I think we're going to go through one of them. But I do want to ask you, Jad, first, which advice that they shared struck up with you the most?
Yeah. So Caroline, during that conversation, brought up a very valuable piece for, individuals who are very close to graduating. And she talked about looking for red flags in a company that, whenever you're looking for an internship, your first job, whatever it may be, and it really can resonate with those young individuals that are getting close to looking for their first job coming out of college. So check out this clip real quick.
A few red flags I would be aware of are just companies that don't seem very invested in their interns. ECS has done a great job of really spending a lot of time to develop us. And right from the start, they felt like they really cared about us and our learning. So I would look out for that.
Yeah, she's right. I think what she's did is she simplified the language. And I think you and I talked about, she made it very simple to where everybody can understand. If you're joining a company, there might be red flags.
Right.
Pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure.
If you think about your trajectory, and have you ever seen where, you can pick out some red flags in a particular company?
Oh yeah. There's always, it's like she said, you really want to hear it from the start of, how am I going to develop with this company, and where is my trajectory kind of looking like? So I think she brought up some very valid points there. And it's something that's great for everybody to keep in mind, whether you're just starting out or maybe a few years into your career for sure.
Like Matt Robbins was talking about, investing in your new talent because you want them to replace you as you continue on and do bigger things. You don't want to have people just simply working for you. You want people that have a path and a future.
Yeah.
That's how you go. Like, how ECS has gone. I think we're close to 2,800 people through that same things. Like, that's how you keep people engaged.
Right. Very valid things to think about for sure. We then moved on to brownfields. Brownfields are those properties you kind of see floating around your town that haven't been developed in a long time, usually from some past industrial development, things of that nature, that can also kind of be problem spots for a community. We had to sit down with Jason Beck, Chuck Whipple, and, others that deal with these sites on the daily basis. And it was kind of a very valuable conversation. Keeping that in mind, let's flash back real quick and check out what Jason had to say about brownfields.
Right. I mean, I think this program's going to last a long time. I think we're going to continue to have brownfields. And I think people see the direct impact on the communities, big or small. You're not going to have a more impactful program. And if you walk into a dilapidated school that's been sitting there for 30, 40 years, no one's using, or a big industrial facility, and that gets converted into, like a senior housing facility or HUD development or something along those lines. I mean, we're converting industrial sites into low-income housing. We have one site that's been sitting for over 50 years, hasn't been touched. And all of a sudden it's got life, it's got vibrancy back into it. And it's feeding the community again.
So Peter, what kind of did you take away from that conversation?
What I like the most about brownfields, I think everybody touched on it for a little bit, but the fact that a brownfield is something that is, for lack of better terms, ugly. It's something
Yep.
people don't want to look at. It's not
Yep.
not anywhere you want to go, but it also has so much potential to where you can go in and you can redevelop it. You can invest a little bit of money in it, and you've got a nice asset, nice piece of property that actually brings the community together. So in my mind, I think you're bringing hope to a community. You start off with something that's like torn down, torn apart, looks ugly. People drive by it, they look the other way, and now it's this nice development. Whether it's like, I don't know, maybe a low income housing, and it can be a shopping center. It could be something of much value to the community, and that's really what I like the most about
Yeah.
the fact that we can do brownfield redevelopment as opposed to going to a nice greenfield, which is like a new piece of land. And we basically cut down the trees and kick out the farm animals, and we essentially build something.
Yep.
And I think brownfield is a much better investment because that land has already been destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's what I like the most about brownfield. I
Yeah.
think it's a cool concept, and there's so much we can do with it. It's not that. I think one of the guests he shared with us is like, we're just getting started. But yeah, I think that's essentially what stuck out with me. Brownfields, like, let's bring hope. So we started off with career development. Then we went to brownfield. But now we're like, okay, let's take it a next level and talk about research and development.
Yeah.
And that was honestly one of our longest, but also in my mind, unbelievably interesting episodes.
Yeah.
So we had Dr. Oliver, who was the head of R&D at ECS. And we also had Bina Ajmira. She's a professor at Iowa State. So I think they both did an excellent job. But what I like the most, like, they explained the fundamentals of R&D, and they basically portrayed the concept of the valley of death. And the valley of death is where ideas go to die. Like, there's a lot of good ideas, and then there's execution.
Yep.
And that's where ideas dies in the middle. I think we had a good clip from Oliver, from Dr. Oliver. Maybe we could play that. And actually, once we play that, I want to hear your thoughts on it, Chad.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out this clip.
So if we think about the valley of death and what it really is, it's where the research doesn't transition to development, which then doesn't transition to practice. So you get something that is too complex for people to understand. It does not translate into practice, therefore it goes away. That's one problem, or one avenue into the valley of death, in which good ideas literally go to die, and that's where they will stay. They never materialize. One of the problems in the R&D field is you get people that are so niche or specific to their focus of research that they don't want to give it up or make it something new.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that he, bringing up the valley of death, right? It's because it's one of those things that so often, we kind of know and understand this scientific method to a degree of like, hey, you got to start somewhere. But more often than not, it kind of feels like we're always hearing about the projects and ideas that made it from ideation all the way through to becoming a tangible product, service, whatever it may be. Right. And so for him to kind of elaborate on that valley of death, it's one of those things that we often don't think about, just because more often than not, we're not going to hear about those ideas that never made it all the way through the whole process. So it was really interesting to hear them, bring that concept of the valley of death up and really flesh it out for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when you think about the valley of death, like, there's probably a lot of great ideas that died there, and probably because of just failure in execution.
Yeah.
I don't know if they touched on it, but maybe there should be a concept like, okay, let's pull all these ideas from the valley of death and revisit them. Now we have new tools, artificial intelligence. We've got so much to work with or to rework, and who knows? And it's also, again, when you go back to the concept of execution, it's about the person executing on the idea. And if the idea is executed by the right person, it has viability. And if a phenomenal idea given to the person that was not compatible with this idea, it will go nowhere. And that's kind of my thought process. And I did like Dr. Ajmira. She talked about some misconception. I think we also joked about what does a R&D person looks like, and there's no but it's not Einstein with big glasses.
Right.
She did have a fun clip. I think we can play that as well.
The other thing I one day I would love to see is TV shows stop displaying the R&D person in that old white coat with the crazy glasses in a, crazy laboratory trying to, cook up evil schemes or whatever. I would love for that image to go away.
That's definitely preconceived notions for sure about what a, person working in R&D would look like. But then also too, kind of her elaborating and really talking to us about, anybody can be successful in R&D. You just kind of have to have that drive. In October, we kind of, elaborated on the first episode. So we had our career kickoff. Well, now let's say you're 5 to 10 years into your career. What's kind of next? And we had in my opinion, probably one of, my favorite conversations that we had with Lauren Zengel and Mark Mokel. Both very well established in their careers, have done some really awesome things. And Mark really highlighted the value of professional organizations and networking as a tool to build those relationships. I'm going to play this clip, and then Peter, I would love to hear your thoughts on it because you're a little bit further on in your career than I am. I know you personally, you are very active in organizations and getting out there and getting your name out there and the company's name. So after this, I really want to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Sure thing.
Talking to folks outside of the work environment is usually when you can build the strongest relationships, because we all get to step away from the day to day, as you talked about, the busy, the phones ringing and all of that. But I've gotten the most networking done in an environment where everybody's kind of free from the tasks of the day. And that's when I've had some of the best conversations, some of the best learning opportunities, maybe when everybody gets to take a little bit of a breath. So we have to create that opportunity for ourselves. And I think that ultimately is the inspiration, because if we don't, we'll be consumed on a day-to-day basis by everything else that's coming at us.
Yeah, I like what Mark said that in his little clip here. And you and I actually talked about it the other day. It's like, what is the concept of compartmentalization?
Yep.
And you could be existing in a bubble. You're thinking on every next task. When am I going to write the next report? Let's say you're a geotech engineer like me. That's my background. You're calling up drillers. You're drilling a site. You're letting the client know what your schedule is. And you're existing in that world. But if you get a chance to step outside, you have to compartmentalize. So forget everything you're working on in the office per se. And you go out and you actually get a chance to disconnect and reconnect with a lot of people. They're all doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the same space, if you want, if it's a business type connection, or if it's just a personal self-development. Let's say you attend a communication organization, you learn how to communicate. I think it's very important just to leave the office, leave everything you're working on, and just take a moment, breathe, reconnect, expand, stretch yourself, because your day to day will be there tomorrow.
Yep. And I think it brings up a valid point of something that we talk about, on the marketing side quite often, of the concept of people hire people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you developing those interpersonal relationships and those skills, that's how you get to know somebody. That's how they know that they can trust you. And then moving on from there, then they're like, you know what? I know Peter is really great at this thing and I need him to do that thing for me. Exactly. And that's where, those networking events and those professional organizations become such a useful tool, not only for growing your career and meeting, people, like-minded people, but then, getting to know individuals and, developing from an interpersonal relationship to a business relationship and kind of going from there.
That's true. And I think you just said something very important. It's people think it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
And part of it is true, but
Sure.
it's also about who knows you.
Yeah.
Like you go out, it becomes a force multiplier. If people know you, then they can help tell your story and the things that you can do, as opposed to you just being one person telling your story. You have 10 people telling your story now. So it becomes a force multiplier. And that's why you want to invest in organizations and in your ecosystem and helping people, because that really also helps tell the story and the impact you're trying to make. And that's kind of That's kind of a good point. I appreciate you. It's good that you said that. It's about who knows you as well.
Yep, for sure. And then to wrap up the year, our most recent episode that we had, another one that's kind of near and dear to my heart with my military background, is we had Ben Temple and John Hicks come on the podcast to, talk about their service and how that's kind of shaped them as a leader. And one of the things that, they both provided such valuable insight as to how they've kind of, levied their military career into their professional career. And one thing that got brought up by both and, varying degrees, but Ben really kind of elaborated on it, was the notion of a servant leader.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at this clip of Ben elaborating on the idea of servant leadership. And then Peter, let me know what you think of this.
And so it's hard to pinpoint the specific practices that we implement at ECS. In a leadership role, it's really more of who you are as a leader, but the ones that John mentioned of putting other people before yourself, primarily. Our job exists as leaders to clear obstacles out of the way, for our people to do good work, to hire good people and turn them loose to do great things, hold people accountable and make them more successful. I mean, ultimately that's what it's about. And the other thing that you touched on, John, that I really resonate with is give praise in public, criticize in private, and that you are, as the leader, and this is something that maybe we need to talk about more often, is that the leader is ultimately responsible for everything their subordinates do and fail to do.
Before I tell you what I think, I want to hear your thoughts because you actually serve.
Yeah, absolutely. It's servant leadership is a very, very interesting one, right? Because not even just from the military aspect, but I'm going to use a little bit of, maybe some slang and metaphors here for it. Whenever you are quote unquote following a leader into battle, right? You want to know that you can trust them, that they have your best interest at heart despite the situation. And I think that that's where the servant leadership really comes in. Because if your people that you have surrounded yourself with on the daily basis know that they can trust you as a leader, know that you have their best interest at heart as a leader, things just run so much more smoothly and more efficiently. So that's one of those things that as a leadership style, I've always looked for with my, leadership team. Can I rely on them to have my back no matter what the situation is?
Exactly.
And so to hear Ben really elaborate on that as how he used it in the military as well as in the civilian side and here at ECS, it was really awesome and refreshing to hear, for sure.
Absolutely. And actually, to that point, I do feel like servant leadership is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the stakes are as high as being in the military and being on the front line. I know Ben served. And the same thing happens in organizations too. As a leader or in any position, really, you want to serve the next person, you want to serve your team, you want to contribute to the success of everyone. And that's going to allow everybody, let's call it a rising tide lifts all ships. That's essentially what that becomes. You're investing your time and you're investing your experience to help people lift up. And I think for me, there's no better way to serve, but I do feel like a lot of people still, they have that leader versus manager concept that's not always clear. They think a manager is a leader, where a lot of managers are actually not effective leaders.
Sure.
And on the long term, they end up taking on different roles as opposed to pushing on a team. But I'm happy we got a chance to go down this, our 2024 episodes and go down memory lane between you and me. And I know we're going to kick off 2025 strong. We've got a lot of topics on the docket. So I think, before we close, actually, Judd, we've been asking this question of everybody, and I've never asked you the question, is what has been something that's been groundbreaking for you?
Well, Peter, you know me, so you know exactly what my answer is going to be. Literally a month and 5 days ago, I became a dad for the first time, and it's been an awesome experience. For me, pregnancy was rough. Let's get that out of the way. I don't envy my wife for having to go through all that, but at the same time too, she was an absolute trooper and did amazing throughout the entire thing, despite having a little bit of a rough pregnancy. And now that the baby's here, I think it's one of those things that you kind of start to discover new things about yourself, right? You think you know everything about you, right? You think you know what your limits are. And I thought I knew my limits when I graduated from, basic training in IT and did the things that I had with the military. And now I'm finding out new things that, hey, baby's crying, got to figure it out, so that, but then also too, just it makes me really appreciative and grateful to be in the situations and the places that I am in life, that I can, try to be the best dad that I can be for my baby girl. And so that's been the most groundbreaking thing for me, is being a dad and getting to go through this, albeit short so far, journey, with years to come. That's definitely been the highlight of my year for sure. Peter, what about you? Let's hear what's been groundbreaking for you, man.
That's awesome, man. I think what has been groundbreaking, and you're fine, you're getting me on the spot here, but this has been a transformational year for me. This is the year where I actually got married. So not a lot of people know that. It's when you go into union with someone, you realize that your whole life changes, and you've probably gone through that before.
Yep.
And we're excited to go on the journey that you're going on now. But I think you realize how life is different now, that you're not just living for yourself, but you also have a partner in your life.
Yep.
You have another person that you share everything with, that you make decisions with, that they tell you about their day, you tell them about your day. And it's really, it's been a great adjustment phase. It's never easy. Great things actually should not be easy, should be challenging.
Sure.
But once you get into a flow, it's just been such an amazing thing, because you feel like you have someone that's going to be there for you, whatever happens. And they're your biggest supporter. They're your biggest coach. They're your biggest advocate. They will do anything for you, and you will do the same. And for me, that's just been really groundbreaking. And I wish I wish these types of relationship for everybody, really.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as we always say, that's definitely groundbreaking. Thank you for checking out what we will call affectionately Groundbreaking Wrapped. Thank you to everybody who gave us a listen throughout the year. Keep an eye out on all the upcoming awesome episodes that are going to be coming up in the future. Happy holidays. Thanks for giving us a listen this year. Look forward to spending next year with you as well. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast. And thank you for listening to Groundbreaking, where consulting meets innovation.
Yeah. Happy holidays, everyone.
This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing herein shall be construed as providing professional engineering services or used to establish the standard of care. This podcast and the comments contained therein represent only the personal views of the participants and do not reflect those of ECS. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors.